Interrupted debate on the first reading of the Māori Purposes Bill.
The Honourable Penny Hinari.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the opportunity to speak on the Māori Purposes Bill, a technical bill, one that looks to make adjustments across a number of pieces of legislation, but it is true, that old adage, that the devil is in the detail. And it's important not to arbitrarily push it to the side and think that it's only changing a few words here and there. We need to look more substantively at some of the changes. I know some of the more sort of straightforward technical changes are around simple things like putting the word Māori in instead of Māoris, because there's no such thing as Māoris with an S. And something like putting a macron on the A for Māoris, simple things like that. Those are really straightforward. And we support all of those. However, if you look a little bit deeper into some of the more substantive parts of this bill, and they are around Te Ture Whenua Māori. Now, we know right across the country that Te Ture Whenua Māori has both been a protection mechanism for Māori land, but also a significant hindrance, insofar as it's put a fence around a lot of the aspiration, a lot of the development aspiration and the economic aspirations that Māori have with respect to the utilisation of their land. So Te Ture Whenua Māori Act is something that needs close inspection. And I appreciate that some of the changes that are proposed in this bill, Mr. Speaker, are technical in nature. They talk about the kinds of representation and the quotas, the percentage of people that must be in attendance at a meeting, etc. But we know that, like we said, the devil is in the detail. The government in the Key administration tried to change Te Ture Whenua Māori substantively. It came up against some resistance, some support. Regardless, what we don't want to happen with this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, is that substantive changes to Te Ture Whenua Māori Act are pushed through without the kind of consultation, without the kind of work alongside Maori communities and those who are impacted by the bill or by the legislation, such as Te Ture Whenua Māori, aren't involved in the conversation around at the table with respect to the law that governs Māori land here in this country. So we support this bill. We want to be upfront about that, but we want to let the Minister know and the House know and indicate to the House that when this particular bill progresses to the next stage, we will look to interrogate some of those smaller parts in legislation that we believe will have a significant impact. And I've already spoken about Te Ture Whenua Māori Act and why it's important that we get that right. It is important to get it right because, of course, economic aspirations for the utilisation of Māori land, economic aspirations in order to allow Māori to build papakainga on their land, all these things are really important. And I'm sure members right across the House will make sure that we get that right. Other parts, Mr. Speaker, are technical in nature. They bring and modernise many of the bits of legislation. For example, the ability to meet online. I know it sounds rather novel in this particular bill, but it's something that's been able to be done in this country for some time now. COVID taught us that we can move a heck of a lot of our operation into Zoom meetings, into online meetings, and it's important that legislation keeps up with the time. And so you'll see, Mr. Speaker, there are a number of bills here that make simple adjustments like that, which are ones, of course, that we support and are reasonably straightforward. The bill also proposes a minor change to the way that Te Mātāwai and the Māori Language Act of 2016, if I recall the date correctly, will make a minor adjustment with respect to the way that it works alongside Te Mātāwai with Māori television. And I think that's going to be really important. The bill, it says here, is set out to encourage and grow te reo Māori, if you will. But, what we've seen from this government hasn't been exactly, huge support for te reo Māori. In fact, in its first 100 days, it did its very best to get rid of te reo Māori in public spaces and other places. So we want to make sure that while the bill proposes something technical and small like that, it actually delivers what it is intended to deliver. And the only way to do that is not only to look at the Māori television legislation, but also to have a closer inspection of Te Mātāwai and the legislation there, and Te Whare Reo Māori Ora, which was actually ushered in by the national-led government in the key administration. Mr. Speaker, I thought I had 10 minutes, but sadly I've only got 5. So for the next 10 seconds, we will say that we will support this bill. We will continue to interrogate to make sure that we dive into the detail.
Remo Nakle.
Speaker, it's a pleasure to rise in support of this bill, the Māori Purposes Bill, and it's also a pleasure to know that it's coming to another select committee that I have the privilege of being part of, the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and that's also alongside my commitments on the Justice Select Committee, the busiest committee at this stage in Parliament. And so, Mr. Speaker, just by way of a brief synopsis, the main objective of this bill, as has been perused so far throughout the speeches with respect to the Māori Purposes Bill, is that essentially we're proposing some minor technical and if I may be so straightforward to say, non-controversial amendments to a suite of Māori affairs legislation. And indeed, we're amending 8 acts, Mr. Speaker, 5 regulations, and we're repealing 3 Māori Purposes Acts because they, from back in the 1930s and early 1940s, they're no longer fit for purpose, they're out of date. And so with the changes that we're proposing with this Māori Purposes Bill, that will include, as I said, repealing those 3 acts as well, from 1937, 1939 and 1945. What I would like to highlight, Mr. Speaker, if I may, is that one of the acts that will be amended is the Maori Community Development Act of 1962. And for those of our listeners beyond these walls, this is the act that essentially established the Maori wardens, community officers and the New Zealand Māori Council. And in this situation, I'd like to acknowledge the New Zealand Māori Council, my beautiful dear friend, the co-chair, Whaia Ann Kendall, who I love so much and who has, over the years that I've been here in New Zealand, had the warmth and the generosity of taking me around with her to different kaupapa Māori events, so my eyes could be opened up to the beauty of our Māori world. I'd also like to tautako and send a shout out to our Māori wardens. Thank you for all the care that you give in making sure we're always safe in different events. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will love to commend this bill to the House.
Councillor Tongieri Manuel.
E te māngai o te whare, hoi anō tēnā anō tātou katoa. Hika, kārehe kōrero ki toa atu i ngā kōrero a taku toa ka ngā pēni hinare i tēnei pō, hoi anō rā, ka tuau ki te whakapota e tahi atu whakaro o tēnei pere. Oh, as soon as you put your earpiece in, Mr. Speaker, I'm turning to English. What I was going to say, kia ora no everybody. There's not much more to say other than what the Honourable Penny Henare has said, but I will make a further contribution. Mr. Speaker, the price of living in paradise is sometimes only 150 of you live there. And that's across a vast expanse. And when you're on the committee of the rugby team, the committee of the marae, the committee of everything else, it doesn't always work. But you do have whānau who live in te whanganui Tara, who live in te Waipounamu, who still feel the strong pull to contribute at home. And so, while it is, it could be perceived as a minor bill, we here on this side are happy to tautoko this bill because of the practical applications it can have, such as mine currently as a trustee of Putanga Marae being developed in Tikitiki. I'm especially intrigued too, Mr. Speaker, as Penny Henare did discuss about the opportunities for our reo and enhancing its understanding and respect throughout Aotearoa. Obviously, the Ture Whenua Māori Act is something that will be scrutinised, as will every other part of this bill, though Labour support it. But whenua is something that is still controversial in Aotearoa today. I don't need to explain that in this House. So any amendments to that in particular, and not just I mean, obviously in Aotearoa Whānui, but specifically in Ikaroa Rāwhiti and Te Tai Rāwhiti. So that will be scrutinised. So while this is, it may be perceived, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, as a minor bill, it is something we're pleased to say to the government opposite. That's something we support, and on behalf of Te Pāti Reipa, e tautoko ana wau I tēnei pere.
Greg Fleming.
Nōku te māringa nui, kia tautoko ai tēnei piri, ki te whare. Hea poto tōku kōrero, kata mea he mama tēnei piri, he oi nui tōna āwinga kina piri kōrero ai nā tā pito o tēnei piri. Nā reira, all I'm going to add is that I love bills that are focused on bringing greater efficiency to the way that we do things. I love legislation like this that increases the rangatiratanga and the mana motahaki of the organisations and the groups and the hapu that will access the systems of this House through this bill, and I particularly love legislation that has in mind the increased flourishing of te reo takitaki, nā te mea koira te tino taonga o Aotearoa katoa. Nā reira, I am delighted to commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Māori Purposes Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Maori Purposes Bill be considered by the Māori Affairs Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.